Have you ever been curious about what it may be like to work behind the scenes of your favorite classic television shows? The off-screen relationships on The Andy Griffith Show were not always picture-perfect, despite the fact that the show brought laughter and warmth into the homes of millions of people. The shocking truth that Ron Howard has been keeping hidden for years is revealed today, and it is that he has a strong dislike for someone who works on set. That's right. Opie's smile was nothing more than a mask for the drama that was brewing behind it. What possible factors could have prompted Ron Howard to feel such intense emotions? Who was it that he detested the most in the world? Stay with us as we uncover this previously untold story that will forever alter the way you perceive this much-loved show. The Andy Griffith Show's lasting impact on the world. After making its debut on CBS in 1960, The Andy Griffith Show went on to become one of the most beloved sitcoms in the entire history of television. Andy Griffith played the role of Sheriff Andy Taylor in the series, which was based on the fictional town of Mayberry in North Carolina. Sheriff Taylor's responsibilities included maintaining peace and raising Opie, his son, who was portrayed by Ron Howard. Due to the fact that it is characterized by lighthearted comedy and excellent moral teachings, it became a favorite during its 8-year run and blended well with the culture of the United States. The portrayal of a humorous deputy named Barney Fife, who was incompetent in his duties and was played by Don Knotts, is perhaps the most cherished of the many significant characters in the film. But there are many other important characters as well. The fact that Knotts was able to successfully engage in humorous dramatization with Griffith's character was a significant contribution to the show, and it was for this role that Knotts was eventually awarded 5 Emmys. Rather than continuing to act in a series, Knotts made the decision to leave the show after the 5th season in order to pursue additional filming opportunities. However, due to the fact that Barney Knotts' performance in the show is among the most recognizable in the entire history of television programming. The television show The Andy Griffith Show was not only a success in terms of the content it presented, but it was also a huge success in terms of the number of viewers it served. The show was consistently ranked among the top 10 in the Nielsen ratings from the very beginning of the series until the very end, and it reached the top of the television chart in 1968, the year that the series was canceled. By virtue of this most recent season, as well as its other extremely successful spin-offs, such as Gomer Pyle, USMC, and Mayberry RFD, it has firmly established itself as a prominent figure in the annals of television history. On the other hand, the show's impact on American culture extends far beyond the duration of its initial run. Its comedic take on life in a small town, combined with characters that are relatable and themes that are universal, has made The Andy Griffith Show a viewer favorite in syndication for many years and across multiple generations. Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, along with Andy Griffith, Ron Howard, and Don Knotts, were among the actors who contributed to the establishment of a legacy that is still celebrated today. Nevertheless, despite the fact that The Andy Griffith Show went on to become a classic, it was the early years that young Ron Howard spent working on set that not only shaped his career, but also the future of Hollywood itself. Ron Howard's early years on set. The early years that Ron Howard spent working on The Andy Griffith Show were quite fascinating. These years were nothing short of transformative for both his professional development and his personal development. Despite the fact that he was only 6 years old at the time, he was signed as Opie Taylor, the mischievous and thoughtful son of Sheriff Andy Taylor. Back in the day, the young actor, who was commonly referred to as Ronnie, won the hearts of a great number of people with relative ease. The natural ability that he possessed to deliver the performances and to engage the audience added an additional layer of warmth to the entertainment. Simply because of this, viewers who had grown up watching him were able to win their hearts over. It was, without a doubt, an excellent beginning for a young actor who would go on to become one of the most successful directors in Hollywood. Working with seasoned actors such as Andy Griffith and Don Knotts was an experience that Howard considered to be priceless, because they took him under their wing and accepted him as a member of their team. When it came to making Howard's early years on screen, as well as behind the scenes, Griffith himself had a significant amount of involvement. Due to the nature of their relationship, The dynamic between them during the show would be that of a father and son, with Griffith providing young Howard with advice and direction while he was growing up. Howard has been deeply appreciative of the fact that Griffith imparted to him a multitude of valuable lessons concerning the importance of professionalism, humility, and hard work in the context of being a child movie star. On the other hand, the life of a child actor proved to be quite challenging. On the shooting floor, Howard took pleasure in the community that surrounded him. On the other hand, the pressure of academics, acting, and maintaining a normal life for children was too much for them to bear. Howard was still just a kid trying to fit in with his peers, and many of them teased him about Opie. This was despite the fact that he would become famous. In a later statement, Howard admitted that he enjoyed acting, but that he occasionally felt resentful of the attention that it brought to his case. The opportunities presented by the Andy Griffith Show and the experiences that came with growing up in front of the camera became a tightrope that needed to be walked in order to achieve successful outcomes. One of the most memorable moments that occurred during the filming of the opening credits was when Opie accidentally threw his rock into the lake, but it did not make a splash in the water. Despite the fact that Howard was fairly young, he was unable to successfully throw the rock far enough to produce the splat that was required for the shot. Fix was a prop man who was waiting to throw another rock at the same time as Opie's throw, and he would make sure that the splash was at the same level. During the time that Howard was attempting to deal with the pressure of playing such a demanding character, this little trick that took place behind the scenes would become a very pleasant memory for him to reflect on. The experience that Ron Howard gained while working on the Andy Griffith Show will lay the groundwork for his extraordinary career, regardless of the challenges that it presented that he encountered. It was not only in the craft of acting that he realized the significance of working together with others, being patient and having a strong will, but also in life in general. His early years spent working on the set helped him develop the skills necessary to become the director and storyteller he would eventually become. In order to get a head start on learning everything that was going on behind the scenes, he was able to observe a television production that was extremely successful. By the time the show came to an end in 1968, Howard had developed into a successful actor, having gone from being a child star with a lot of potential. Behind the scenes, there are tensions. On the big screen, the Andy Griffith Show exuded a friendly and quaint small-town style. This was not always the case on set, where harmonies were sometimes as close as an arm's length away from animosities. Andy Griffith did not portray the role of the unflappable and easygoing lead actor who never loses his cool off camera at any point in the scenes. He is also prone to playing those light-hearted pranks, which occasionally did not sit well with the other cast members, but were still entertaining. The relationship between Griffith and Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, appears to have been more complicated than that of Griffith. While Bavier was an experienced Broadway actress herself, it was said that she found Griffith's clowning distractions to be unprofessional. As a result, the two of them occasionally came into conflict with one another. However, she was not the only one experiencing the tension. Despite the fact that Don Knotts and Andy Griffith remained lifelong friends, both actors went through periods of discomfort in their personal lives, particularly with regard to the future of the show's direction. When Knotts first signed his contract, it was for a total of 5 seasons. Knotts was already committed to other commitments when the show lasted for a longer period of time than that, so he ultimately remained there. Although they continued to be close friends, both of them were filled with disappointment. Knotts had been able to have a more significant role in determining the course of the show. Having said that, however, the practical jokes that Griffith would pull during the show eventually became a part of the background. Don Knotts was always one of his favorite people to victimize. It was quite common for him to wake him up from naps by allowing the metal film cans to fall to the ground. Even though he was startled, Knotts did not appear to be bothered. Additionally, the two of them quickly became a well-known duo that fans could feel even when they were on screen together. Once, when George Goober Lindsay woke up from a nap, he discovered duck guts strung around his dressing room. This was just one example of how even George Goober Lindsay fell for Griffith's pranks on occasion. What a lot of fun. These more serious cast members, such as Bavier, occasionally found themselves in conflict with the practical jokes. When it came to her interactions with Griffith, Bavier was, without a doubt, the most notoriously antagonistic of the bunch. The easygoing, small-town farce approach to comedy that Griffith embodied was not something that she appreciated, despite the fact that she had received training in New York. When they were not on screen together, their relationship was much more complicated than it appeared to be on television. Despite this, both of them were able to maintain a professional demeanor when the cameras were rolling, and they never allowed their personal disagreements to get in the way of the work that they were producing. In later years of her life, Bavière admitted that she had played a role in the tense relationship, and she expressed her regret to Griffith in a heartfelt manner before she passed away. Attempting to open a chapter of tension that has been building up for decades, last but not least, the professionalism of the cast was ultimately what prevailed over the occasional tensions that occurred behind the scenes. Despite the fact that they had many differences, they were able to create one of the most beloved shows on television, which continues to move people even today. There are a lot of things that contribute to the legend of the Andy Griffith Show, including serious disagreements, lighthearted pranks, and moments of tension. On the set, there are some strong commitments of the cast to their craft in a remarkably short period of time. This is in contrast to the off-screen dynamics, which serve to remind one of the pressures that working in such an environment requires. Regardless of the complexities that may have been present in their individual lives, the program continues to serve as a testament to the integrity of those connections they share. The relationship with Andy Griffith. One of the factors that contributed to the success of the Andy Griffith Show was the special relationship that Andy Griffith shared with his fellow cast members, particularly Ron Howard. In real life, Griffith, who played the role of Andy Taylor, a fatherly sheriff, showed a similar level of parental behavior toward his own children who appeared on screen, as Howard, who played Opie, struggled to deal with the challenges that come with being a child star. He could frequently count on his co-star to provide him with guidance and reassurance. The enormous respect that Howard has for Griffith has been expressed in public on multiple occasions, and Howard has given Griffith a great deal of credit for helping to shape his career in Hollywood. This father-son relationship was depicted in a significant way on screen. However, behind the camera, Griffith frequently had disagreements with other members of the cast, the most notable of which was with Frances Bavière, who played the Aunt Bee actress herself. The actress Bavière had a background in classical training. However, there were times when she did not agree with Griffith's lighthearted and playful mannerisms while they were filming. Both of them maintained a professional demeanor throughout the entirety of the show's run, despite the fact that the differences in their personalities had the potential to cause some irritation. Bavière allegedly apologized to Griffith for the tension that existed between them during the filming process and spoke with him many years later. The fact that Griffith was able to form a friendship with Don Knotts was one of the most significant highlights of his life and career. The two actors had a wonderful chemistry with one another, and their incredible comedic timing became the foundation of the program. Even after Knotts had left the series in 1965, the two actors continued to interact with one another as close friends behind the camera. Later on, Griffith came to the realization that the show would never be the same again. However, the friendship between the two of them lasted until Knotts' passing in 2006, which is evidence of how strong the friendship still is. In general, despite the fact that Griffith had his fair share of disagreements with various members of the cast, he emerged victorious. Through his long-lasting relationships and bonds with many of his fellow actors, particularly his mentorship of Ron Howard and his good and close friendship with Don Knotts, he influenced the on-screen dynamics in a manner that was very similar to the way that he influenced the dynamics behind the scenes. He is without a doubt the central figure who contributed to the success of the show. These relationships, despite the fact that they were occasionally tumultuous, have been a significant contributor to the Andy Griffith Show's enduring legacy and impact on the history of television. The unlikely and unbreakable friendship that Andy Griffith shared with Don Knotts became the show's heart and soul, both on and off the screen. While Andy Griffith played a fatherly role to Ron Howard, it was his friendship with Knotts that truly became the show's foundation. The unlikely friendship with Don Knotts. Andy Griffith and Don Knotts had another close relationship that was characterized by a close working relationship. The only show that Don Knotts ever appeared on was The Andy Griffith Show, but his performance as the bumbling yet lovable deputy Barney Fife won over the hearts of viewers just as much as it did Griffith's. Following Griffith's efforts to persuade management of their position, the two men quickly became the focal point of the show. Outside of the screen, Griffith and Knotts had a profound friendship that went beyond the scope of their respective careers. In spite of the fact that Griffith would play the role of the straight man to Knotts' goofy Barney in the show, the friendship that they shared in real life was marked by mutual respect and admiration for one another. Knotts would reveal how Griffith had provided him with the opportunity to shine, while Griffith would frequently talk about Knotts' impeccable timing and talent. Knotts would also praise Griffith for his own performance. Even after Knotts left the show in 1965, they continued to spend a significant amount of their free time together, demonstrating that their friendship was not limited to the confines of the set of the show. However, they remained close friends throughout their entire lives. Knotts' decision to leave the show in order to pursue a career in film on a full-time basis was not without sadness. Knotts was never the same after the death of Knotts, as Griffith himself admits. Knotts was never the same. Not only did Griffith miss the energy and the humor, but he also missed the companionship that he had with Knotts while they were working together on the set. The friendship between the two brothers in the entertainment industry continued to flourish throughout all of these years, despite the fact that they were no longer an essential part of the team at work. In addition, it was during the final days of Knotts' life that Griffith was observed sitting by his side. Through their on-screen and off-screen relationship, they have become one of the most iconic pairings in the history of television. This is due to the chemistry that they portray in front of the audience, while their real-life relationship serves as evidence of the longevity that genuine friendship can possess. This Griffith-Knotts relationship, which has been shaped in genuine affection and success over the course of several decades, has been supported by fans. It's time to face the truth. Who was it that Ron Howard detested? It is highly likely that Ron Howard's co-stars on The Andy Griffith Show would not be the source of the shocking revelation that revealed who he detested during his time on the show for the first time. In point of fact, Howard has demonstrated a great deal of respect for the entire cast and crew that has been instrumental in the development of his career. However, the things that really irritated him were not other people, but rather the pressures that come along with being a child star. Howard entered childhood while he was being swept up in a whirlwind of responsibility. Alongside the role of Opie, it was necessary to maintain a balance between school and daily life. That most certainly did not leave much room for kids to have a typical childhood. It was finally in interviews that Ron Howard admitted that despite the fact that he had enjoyed his work while he was on the show, he was bothered by the constant attention from fans and the pressure that came with being in the spotlight. Because he was an Opie, he frequently failed to connect with other children his age, and they would easily make fun of him for being an Opie. Even though he was working on one of the most popular shows in the industry, Howard felt extremely isolated. Being a part of a well-known program such as The Andy Griffith Show brought about a certain amount of fame. Without a doubt, it was not always a blessing, but it was sometimes imposed upon him as a burden that he had to bear. Despite the fact that he spent his entire day working in the company of encouraging adults, he remembers that to his left, Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and Frances Bavier were sitting on stools in front of him. He also remembers that the cast was composed of talented individuals. There was going to be a significant emotional toll that came with being a child star. Other than the never-ending hours of filming and the never-ending repetition of lines, he faced challenges that were more difficult. Howard was afflicted with all of the typical childhood disabilities, in addition to the additional pressure of attempting to be professional. This inner conflict, on the other hand, was something that he kept to himself for a considerable amount of time. And when he looked back, Howard admitted that it was not exactly easy for him to be a young boy living two lives, one in front of the camera and one behind the controls. It's interesting to note that Ron Howard has never spoken ill of his fellow actors or actresses. Both his relationship with Andy Griffith, with whom he had a kind of bond similar to that of a father figure, and his relationship with Don Knotts, who would always make Ron laugh, are things that he feels a great deal of affection for. In spite of the fact that they occasionally had disagreements with one another behind the scenes, the cast continued to show their support for Howard throughout the entirety of the show's run. During his time on set, they treated him with respect and made sure he was comfortable. Because of this, I believe that his frustration stems less from the people around him and more from the pressures that he feels within himself as a result of growing up too quickly. The hatred that Ron Howard harbored was, in fact, directed toward fame in general and not toward a particular individual. He has been pretty open and honest about how it is to be a child star and the emotional struggles that can come along with it, since he has already reached adulthood. Having said that, he is very quick to point out all of the positive outcomes that resulted from his time spent working on The Andy Griffith Show with great enthusiasm. In spite of the fact that these were the formative years that laid the groundwork for his legendary career as a director and producer, he had to pay a price that would forever alter his perspective on fame and childhood. The real-life events that took place off-screen were something entirely different, full of laughter, pranks, and playful antics. While the television show that was being shown on the screen was a wholesome and feel-good show, the off-screen shenanigans were something else entirely. It should come as no surprise that Andy Griffith was the source of a significant portion of the mischief. Griffith, a humorous individual who had a fondness for practical jokes, was the source of the lighthearted and somewhat fun atmosphere that persisted on set. He frequently made sure that his co-stars were the targets of harmless pranks. Don Knotts was one of his favorite targets, and one of his favorite tricks was to wake him up from his naps by loudly crashing metal film canisters on the floor, much to Knotts' shocked surprise. Knotts, being the affable celebrity that he was, joined everyone else in their laughter despite the fact that he was the target of such practical jokes on multiple occasions. It was also well known that Griffith was known for playing very cruel tricks on a variety of people. Not just Knotts. One of the other people who fell victim to him was the actor George Goober Lindsay, who played the role of the laid-back mechanic on the show. After falling asleep, Griffith was able to successfully fill Lindsay's dressing room with duck guts at one point in time. After the long days of filming, the pranks were not intended to be malicious. Rather, they were devised as a means of relieving stress. In addition to further strengthening the camaraderie that existed on set, the playful moments also added to the connectivity that existed between the actors long after the play had concluded. On the other hand, the humorous nature of this sitcom is not something that everyone can tolerate. The actor Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, a more disciplined character, never had much patience for extracurricular activities that took place outside of the photographic frame. Bavier, who had received classical training in acting, favored an environment that was more professional. He frequently became irritated by Griffith's comedic antics and his laid-back outlook on life. Despite the fact that other members of the cast were able to take the heat, Bavier's performance served to keep her at a safe distance from the comedic moments. Even though they maintained their professionalism in front of the cameras, it was common knowledge that she and Griffith had a tense relationship when they were together. The fact that humor used backstage frequently made its way into the performances is one of the most interesting aspects. An example that comes to mind is the episode of Runaway Kid, in which Opie and his friends pull a prank on Sheriff Taylor by moving the town sheriff right in front of a fire hydrant. As a result, the town sheriff receives a ticket for his actions. This show's charm and lighthearted appeal can be attributed, in large part, to the off-screen humor that the cast shared with one another, which really fueled the on-screen chemistry. These plays that were performed off-camera only served to enhance the genuineness of the comedic tone of the series. In addition to keeping the cast's morale high during the long hours of filming, the off-screen shenanigans and pranks that took place on The Andy Griffith Show were also responsible for the formation of friendships that will last a lifetime among the cast members. Despite the fact that the show itself has won over the hearts of viewers, the humor that occurs behind the scenes helps the cast stay together and have a good time. If that was the case, then the fact that the warmth and comedy that they displayed off-camera was just as genuine as it was on camera, as it was presented both above and below the camera, deepens the love that fans have for this series and demonstrates that Mayberry Magic was just as genuine off-camera as it was on camera. One of the most surprising moments related to The Andy Griffith Show came long after filming ended when Frances Bavier, known as Aunt Bee, apologized to Andy Griffith. Despite their warm on-screen chemistry, their relationship off-screen was strained. Bavier, a serious professional, struggled with Griffith's prankster nature, and tension grew between them over the years. Reflecting on her time with Griffith, Bavier later called him to apologize for being difficult on set. Griffith graciously accepted, and they made peace before her death in 1989, bringing closure to their strained relationship. This moment of reconciliation highlighted the power of forgiveness in even the most challenging professional relationships. Meanwhile, Ron Howard, who played Opie Taylor on the show, went on to have an impressive career. After the Andy Griffith Show ended, he starred as Richie Cunningham on Happy Days cementing his place as a beloved young actor. His interests eventually shifted to directing, and in 1977 he directed his first major film, Grand Theft Auto *. Howard's directing career flourished with acclaimed films like Apollo 13 *, A Beautiful Mind *, and The Da Vinci Code *. His storytelling talent and collaborative approach have earned him numerous accolades, including 2 Academy Awards. Howard's legacy extends beyond his work as a director. His production company, Imagine Entertainment, co-founded with Brian Grazer, produced hit shows like Arrested Development and 24 *. From his role as Opie to becoming a Hollywood powerhouse, Ron Howard's career evolution reflects both his versatility and his lasting impact on the entertainment industry. There are many valuable lessons to be learned from the drama that takes place behind the scenes of The Andy Griffith Show. These lessons are applicable not only to the entertainment industry, but also to anyone who works through real-life relationships in stressful situations. When it comes to the lessons that can be learned from their experiences, professionalism is frequently the most important one. Although it was possible to see and hear how the tensions between Andy Griffith and Frances Bavier were unrelenting, the show that they were putting on appeared to be warm and wholesome. To say the least, the fact that the participants were able to put aside their personal differences in order to focus on the success of the show is a testament to the fact that professionalism plays a significant role in maintaining the integrity of projects while personal dynamics were being stifled. Reconciliation is yet another option. In the same way that Frances Bavier's apology to Andy Griffith, which he made right before she passed away, was almost like a lesson that opened my eyes to the fact that everything can be reconciled, regardless of how time may have made the situation more complicated. With that being said, simple acts of letting go of the past and apologizing can help mend fences and heal a great deal of past wounds, regardless of whether they take place at work or at home. This example of humility displayed by Bavier serves to remind us that even for long-standing tensions, it is possible that they can be resolved through straightforward acts of communication and forgiveness. Another point that is driven home by the show is the importance of maintaining a sense of humor even in the most trying of circumstances. Andy Griffith's fondness for practical jokes served to strengthen the bonds between the cast members, to make the atmosphere on location more enjoyable, and to establish relationships that would endure for decades. A healthy atmosphere can be created through the use of humor in moderation, which can help to alleviate tension and make it easier to triumph over challenges. Lastly, the legacy of this show is a testament to the power of interpersonal relationships and the importance of cultivating relationships that are constructive, supportive, and long-lasting. With the passage of time, Andy Griffith and Don Knotts developed a close relationship, despite the fact that there were times when the cast and the stars of The Andy Griffith Show were at odds with one another. Their friendship lasted well beyond the conclusion of the show, which serves as a reminder that the connections we make in our professional lives can leave negative effects that are long-lasting and positive, thereby influencing our lives.